My son-in-law leaned across my kitchen table and told me my pregnant daughter was not special and nothing in his life would change for her. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The old refrigerator hummed behind me while the cheap kitchen clock clicked too loudly on the pale yellow wall. He sat there like he owned the place, elbows planted on my table, fingers tapping on the wood I'd sanded and painted myself 15 years ago. The overhead light was cold and unforgiving, turning the lines on his face sharp and his eyes harder than I'd ever seen them. "Let me be clear, Mrs. Carter," he said, voice low, almost calm. "Just because she's pregnant doesn't mean she gets to stop doing what's expected of her." I stared at him, at the man my daughter had been crying over on the phone less than an hour ago. Jake, 28. Handsome in that boyish way that had charmed our whole family when he first appeared at Thanksgiving. Now he looked like a stranger someone had dragged in and left at my table. "What do you mean by that?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. I wrapped my hands around my mug, now full of cold chamomile tea, more to keep them from shaking than anything else. He rolled his shoulders like he was preparing for a meeting, not a conversation with the mother of his wife. "She's been emotional, dramatic, saying she's tired, nauseous, that she needs me to help more around the house." He even curled his fingers into air quotes like he was mocking her. A pulse of anger pushed up my throat. My daughter was 9 weeks pregnant and still calling me in the middle of the day when the nausea made her cry quietly in the bathroom at their apartment. I was the one who listened to her breathing through the phone because she didn't want to bother him at work. I knew every crack in her voice. "She says you told her that," I said slowly, choosing my words as carefully as I could, "that nothing will change." "I did," he replied, not even blinking, "because that's reality. Someone has to work his ass off to provide for this family. That's me. She wanted to stay home and finish college. Fine. That means she takes care of the cooking, the cleaning, the house. End of story." He said it like he was reciting terms of a contract. Somewhere down the hallway, the radiator clanged and then went quiet again. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sliding across the thin curtains and cutting a bright strip of light over his jaw. "And what about when she feels sick?" I asked. "When her back starts hurting, when she can't keep anything down? Pregnancy takes a toll, Jake." He shrugged, a tiny lift of his shoulders that made my skin prickle. "My mother did it. She had 3 kids, worked part-time, and still kept the house spotless. Never complained. She pushed through. That's what being a mother is. If I start babying her now, how is she going to handle an actual baby?" The way he said mother made me feel like he was spitting on the word. I remembered being pregnant with my daughter at 23, standing over a sink full of dishes, my ankles swollen, my lower back screaming. I also remembered my own husband walking over, taking the dishcloth gently from my hand, and telling me to sit down. That small mercy had carried me through days I thought I couldn't survive. "You told her all that?" I managed. He leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms over his chest. His hoodie stretched across his shoulders, a dark navy that looked almost black under the harsh light. "I told her exactly what she needed to hear. She's been coddled enough. She has expectations now, responsibilities. Being tired isn't an excuse." I could almost hear my daughter's voice from earlier, the way it cracked when she said, "Mom, he talked to me like I was 2 inches tall." She'd tried to laugh, but I heard the hurt bleeding through. "You expect her?" I said, keeping my gaze locked on his, "to keep doing everything she's doing now, by herself, through the entire pregnancy?" "I expect her," he said, "to do her job as a wife. I go out and work, she runs the house. That's what we agreed on. Just because there's a baby now doesn't mean the entire world has to revolve around how she feels every minute of the day." His tone stayed quiet, controlled, but there was something cruel curling around the edges of his words. He sounded like a manager discussing performance metrics, not a husband talking about his pregnant wife. "Jake," I said softly, "she's growing your child." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "And I'm providing for them. Everyone seems to forget that part. She asked me last night what I plan to do to help. To help? He scoffed. I already do enough. A muscle twitched near his eye, and he ran his thumb along the rim of the glass of water I'd set in front of him when he walked in. He hadn't touched it. It sat between us, catching the light. The surface, perfectly still. What happened last night? I asked. He smirked, as if the memory annoyed him more than it hurt. We were getting ready for bed. She asked me to turn off the lights. She was not feeling well. He tilted his head, mocking her words. I told her no, that I expect her to walk through the apartment and turn them off like she always does. It's not hard. She got all quiet, went and did it anyway. Then I told her we weren't going to change everything just because she peed on a stick. My fingers tightened around the mug until my knuckles ached. The kitchen felt smaller, the air heavier, like all the oxygen had been sucked toward him. And then, I asked. He looked annoyed now, as if I were making him retell a story he'd rather forget. I explained to her that pregnancy isn't some kind of disability pass. If she can't handle basic chores while pregnant, how's she going to handle sleepless nights and a screaming baby? I told her it's a mother's job to push through no matter how she feels. If I start helping with everything, I'll be creating a weak mother. I won't do that to my kid. There it was. The same line my daughter had repeated to me through tears, holding her stomach like she could already feel the weight of everything he was piling on her. She started yelling, he continued, said she wished she'd known this is how you felt before getting pregnant with my baby. His jaw tightened. Then she said she regretted it, regretted getting pregnant. That's not what she said, I cut in quietly. She said she wished she'd known how you felt before getting pregnant. That's not the same as regretting the baby. He slammed his palm lightly on the table, not enough to make a loud noise, but enough to rattle the spoon on the saucer. Well, that's how it sounded to me. The light above us flickered once, buzzing faintly before steadying again. It cast a harsh shine over his wedding band, the metal catching my eye like a warning. And then you left, I said. You packed a bag and went to your mother's. He avoided my gaze then, staring instead at the little chip in the tabletop corner where years ago my daughter had dropped a heavy pan. She pushed me, he muttered. She knows how sensitive I am about commitment, saying things like that. It broke my heart. I let the silence stretch between us. In that silence, I could hear my daughter pacing her small living room somewhere across town. One hand on her belly, one on her phone, waiting to see if I could fix this, like mothers always somehow do. Your mother called me, I said at last. She and your sister have been telling her I broke your heart, that she needs to apologize, or you're not coming home. For the first time that night, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. It was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. They're right, he said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier edge. She hurt me, and she disrespected what I do for this family. I work hard, Mrs. Carter. I'm not going to turn into some housemaid just because she got pregnant. I leaned forward, my own reflection faintly visible in the dark window behind him. A tired woman in her 50s, hair pulled back, face lined from years of doing exactly what he was dismissing. Pushing through pain, fatigue, heartbreak, because that's what mothers do. Jake, I said softly, if you think turning off the lights at night and helping your pregnant wife is turning into a housemaid, then you have no idea what being a father actually is. His eyes snapped up to mine, and for the first time I saw something else there, something tighter, more defensive, the kind of look people get when they realize they're about to be seen clearly for the first time and don't like it. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, my phone lit up on the table between us, my daughter's name glowing on the screen, vibrating so hard it started to inch toward his untouched glass of water. The phone buzzed again and slid the last inch toward the glass, as if it were trying to force its way between us. I snatched it up before it could tip over. My daughter's name filled the screen, her picture, a sunlit selfie from some better weekend, looking nothing like the broken voice I'd heard earlier. I answered. Sweetheart? All I could hear at first was breathing, then a small, wet sound like she was swallowing sobs. Mom? I'm here, I said. Is he still there? She whispered. I glanced at Jake. His eyes were fixed on me now, jaw clenched, hands folded as if he had every right to sit there listening to our conversation in my kitchen. Yes, I said carefully, we're talking. There was a small silence. Then her voice sharpened, not with anger, but with the thin, shaking edge of fear. His mom and sister have been calling me all afternoon. They said I broke him. They said I needed to apologize for making him cry. Across the table, Jake's expression flickered. Just a second of something like embarrassment before it hardened again. In front of who? I asked. On speaker, she said. In their living room. I could hear people in the background. I think his aunt was there. They said I was ungrateful and if I can't handle pregnancy, maybe I'm not ready to be a mother at all. I closed my eyes for one heartbeat. When I opened them, Jake was still looking at me, waiting, like I was a judge about to deliver a verdict. Where are you now? I asked. At home. Alone. A hollow laugh slipped out of her. He left with a bag this morning. Threw his pillow in the hallway before he walked out, like even sharing a bed with me was too much. The back of my neck prickled. Jake's gaze didn't move from my face, but his fingers tightened slightly on the table edge. I'm coming over, I said. You don't have to. I'm coming over, I repeated softer. Lock the door, drink some water. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I hung up, the kitchen felt even colder. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the small draft sneaking around the window frame. They all seemed louder. Jake lifted his chin. Running to rescue her again? I stood up slowly. My knees complained, but I ignored them, reaching for my car keys on the hook by the door. I'm going to see my pregnant daughter who's alone and scared. That shouldn't bother you, Jake. She's not scared, he muttered. She's manipulative. She knows how to make everyone feel sorry for her. I stopped, hand on the keys. Is that what you told your mother? His silence answered for him. A message popped up on my screen. It was from an unknown number. But the preview showed enough. This is Jake's mom. You need to teach your daughter some respect before she ruins my son's life. Another buzz, another line beneath it. And while you're at it, maybe remind her pregnancy is not a disability. Without meaning to, I tilted the phone slightly so he could see it. A tiny, satisfied smile twitched at the corner of his mouth before he swallowed it down. That small reaction, that hint of pleasure at their cruelty, hit me harder than his words had. It was like watching someone enjoy the sound of a glass breaking on the floor. You should go, he said, standing up at last. But if you're going over there just to feed into her drama, don't expect me to play along. I meant what I said. Nothing is changing. I heard you, I replied. The question is whether you understood what you said. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping across the tile. At the doorway, he paused. Tell her, he said over his shoulder, that when she's ready to be a real wife and a real mother, she knows where to find me. The front door closed behind him with a soft click, too gentle for how loud it sounded in my chest. I drove to my daughter's apartment with my hands tight on the steering wheel, streetlights flashing across the windshield like pale blinks. The winter air had that raw, metallic edge, and the dashboard heater whined as it tried to keep up. By the time I climbed the stairs to the second floor, my hips were protesting, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Her door opened before I knocked. She must have been standing right behind it. Her face was pale, eyes red and puffy. She still wore the oversized t-shirt she liked to sleep in, one of Jake's old ones, the neckline stretched out. The sight of his logo across her chest made my stomach twist. "Mom," she breathed, stepping aside. The apartment smelled faintly of tomato sauce and something sour, like a dish left too long in the sink. The living room light was on, the hallway light was on, the kitchen light was on, every bulb burning, as if she'd been too distracted or too drained to go from room to room flipping switches the way he insisted. "Sorry about the mess," she said automatically, glancing around as if seeing it for the first time. A blanket was crumpled on the couch, half-empty water glasses on the coffee table, a small trash can near the bathroom overflowing with crumpled tissues and ginger candy wrappers. I shook my head. "You don't need to apologize to me." She sank onto the sofa, pulling her knees up despite the small swell of her belly. Her hand went there without thinking, fingers splayed, protective. "What did he say to you?" she asked. "At your place." I sat down beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. "He repeated what he told you last night," I said. "That nothing is going to change, that it's your job to do everything in the house, no matter how you feel." She let out a shuddering breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He kept saying that over and over, like he was rehearsing it. "This is what will be expected of you every night." I thought I was imagining the way he said it. "No," I said quietly. "You weren't." Her phone dinged on the coffee table. She flinched, then reached for it with a trembling hand. The screen lit up with a family group chat. His family, not ours. Jake's mother. "We raised him better than to tolerate disrespect. You pushed him to this." His sister. "He's been crying all afternoon. I hope you're happy." Another message from his mother. "You will call him and apologize. You will tell him you were wrong. Our women don't act like this." My daughter's thumb hovered over the keyboard, then fell away uselessly. "They called earlier," she said. "Put me on speaker. His mom said I should be grateful I don't have to work, that other women would kill for a husband like him, that if I can't handle a few chores now, what kind of mother will I be?" My throat tightened. "What did you say?" I tried to explain I've been so nauseous I can barely stand up some mornings. That I'm trying to keep up with classes and the apartment, and she swallowed. They laughed. His sister said pregnancy isn't an excuse to be lazy, and then his mom said, "If my back didn't break when I was pregnant with 3 kids, yours won't either." Another message appeared on the screen, as if summoned by the memory. His mother. "Until you fix this, he's staying here, where he's respected. We won't let you destroy him with your dramatics." We read it together. The tiny gray text sat there like a stain. My daughter's eyes filled again. "Am I crazy, Mom?" she whispered. "Am I being dramatic? Maybe I shouldn't have yelled. Maybe I shouldn't have said I wished I'd known how he felt before I got pregnant." "You're not crazy," I said. I kept it to those 3 words because anything more would have broken open into something that might frighten her. She took a few quick breaths, trying to control herself. "They said I should have talked to him calmly, that I provoked him, that I made him feel like a bad husband, and now he's over there with them, and they're all telling him I'm the problem." From the hallway, a small LED light on the thermostat blinked, the only bright point in the dim space. The heater kicked on with a low whir, blowing lukewarm air that smelled faintly dusty. "I feel like they're all watching me," she said. "Like everything I do now will be judged. If I don't vacuum, it's because I'm lazy. If I cry, it's because I'm unstable. If I ask for help, it's because I'm weak." That sinking, cornered feeling slid into my own chest. It was like the room had tilted just enough that any wrong move would send her sliding further into their narrative. Her phone vibrated again, this time with a call. Jake's name. She stared at it, frozen. "Do you want to answer?" I asked. "Not alone," she whispered. I nodded and reached to hit speaker before setting the phone gently on the table between us. "Hello?" she said softly. Jake's voice came through clear, but there was a new quality to it, a performative calm, like he knew others were listening in. "Have you thought about what you said?" he asked, skipping any greeting. "Have you realized how much you hurt me?" In the background, I could hear another woman's voice, his mother murmuring something indistinct, the rustle of movement as if they were all gathered around, listening. "I didn't say I regretted the baby," my daughter said. "I said I wished I'd known." "You implied it," he cut in. You made me feel like a mistake. A pause. My mother is here. She heard everything. She agrees you went too far. There it was again, the chorus behind him, unseen, feeding the script. I'm sorry you felt hurt, my daughter said, her voice shaking. But what you said to me... You yelled, he said. You disrespected me. You questioned my commitment as a husband, all because I asked you to keep doing what you've always done. I asked you to turn off the lights, she whispered. I felt sick. And I told you no, he replied. Not because I don't love you, because I need you to be strong. Motherhood is not for the faint of heart. His mother's voice floated clearly into the line now, no longer a whisper. We're not raising a princess here, she said. We're raising a mother. If she breaks now, what happens when the baby comes? I felt my hands curl into fists on my lap. My daughter took an unsteady breath. So what do you want from me? She asked. Exactly. Say it. There was a brief silence, then a soft, careful answer, each word placed like a stone. I want you, Jake said, to call my mother and my sister and apologize for upsetting them. I want you to admit you were wrong to yell at me, and I want you to promise that nothing is going to change in this house just because you're pregnant. The heater clicked off. The sudden quiet made his demand hang heavier in the air. And if I don't? She asked. Another pause. I could almost feel him glancing around the room he was in, checking with his mother, gauging how far to push. If you don't, he said slowly, then maybe we need to rethink what kind of family we're building here, and whether I can trust you to be part of it. When my daughter was born, the first thing I remember isn't her cry. It's the sound of the fetal monitor, that relentless beeping that suddenly slowed, then sped up, and the way the fluorescent lights above the hospital bed hummed like angry bees while nurses rushed around my legs. The air had smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. My hair was stuck to my neck with sweat. Somebody shouted for another doctor. Someone else told me not to panic. I stared at the ceiling tiles and thought, this is how it feels when the entire world hangs on one tiny heartbeat. Later, when they finally placed her in my arms, pink and furious, a nurse slipped a small white appointment card onto the metal tray beside me. It had the date of my follow-up check written in rushed blue ink. I remember thinking how fragile that card looked, the edges already curling, even as they told me my baby was fine. I kept that card. I shouldn't have, but I did. I folded it and slid it into my wallet behind my driver's license, where it stayed for decades, pressed flat under plastic, like some quiet proof that I'd already almost lost her once. Back then, we didn't have much. Our first apartment was a one-bedroom with thin walls and pipes that clanged whenever the neighbor showered. In the winter, you could see your breath in the hallway before the heater sputtered to life. The whole place smelled faintly of damp drywall and the fried food from downstairs. Her crib was secondhand. The paint chipped in 3 corners. I cleaned it with vinegar and hot water, my fingers pruning in the basin because we couldn't afford fancy cleaners. The mattress was firm, the sheets thin but clean. I used to stand over her at night, listening to that small staccato breathing, counting each inhale like a prayer. Her father worked nights at the warehouse then. He'd come home at 3 a.m., boots heavy on the linoleum, shoulders slumped. Sometimes he'd stop in the doorway and just watch us, me sitting in the rocking chair with our daughter curled against my chest like a warm loaf of bread. He'd come over, take the bottle gently from my hand and whisper, "Go sleep. I'll walk her a while." I'd drag myself to bed, the cheap mattress springs protesting, and listen to the muffled rhythm of his footsteps in the living room as he paced with her. Even exhausted, he understood something Jake seems to have no interest in. Love is work, too. Money was always tight. I had a little spiral notebook I kept in my purse, the cover soft from being handled, the edges darkened with fingerprints. Every expense went into that notebook. Gas, diapers, bread, the occasional splurge on a small toy or a second-hand dress. I wrote the numbers carefully in blue pen, underlining anything that hurt. The extra $20 we didn't have, the copay for her fever appointment, the shoes I should have bought for myself, but didn't. That notebook became another quiet witness to my life. Groceries pressed up against late fees, formula costs next to notes like, ask if we can pay the electric bill in 2 parts. Back then, it wasn't just about surviving the day. It was about making sure she never saw the fear that lived behind those numbers. I remember one winter night in particular. The thermostat was turned down to save money, and the air in the apartment had that sharp, dry feel that makes your skin itch. My daughter was around 3 then. She stood on a dining chair watching snow fall past the window, her breath fogging the glass. "Is it cold in the sky too?" she asked. I was at the table with my notebook open and the bills spread out like a fan in front of me. My fingers were numb from more than temperature. I looked at her, hair frizzing around her face, wearing pajamas I'd patched at the knees. "Probably," I said. "But you're in here where it's warm." I stood, walked over, wrapped my arms around her small body. She was always so warm, my little sun in that drafty place. Behind her head. The snow kept falling, soft and indifferent to whether we paid our gas bill on time. When she started school, everything felt like it cost more. Field trip fees, school pictures, the endless parade of spirit days and fundraisers. I picked up extra hours at the grocery store, sliding cans over the scanner, the beep, beep, beep of the register becoming its own strange soundtrack to those years. I'd keep my spiral notebook tucked near the register, scribbling totals during my 10-minute breaks, calculating how many hours I needed to cover shoes, a winter coat, that school science project that required supplies we didn't already have at home. Some nights I'd get home with my feet aching so badly it felt like my bones were splintering, and she'd come running to meet me at the door with some drawings she'd made. "Look, Mom," she'd say. Face bright, crayon marks all over her hands. "It's us." She always drew us as the same height. We didn't have new cars or vacations. Our road trips were to the free zoo days or to the park 2 towns over because their slides were taller. I packed sandwiches wrapped in wax paper and apples cut into quarters so she wouldn't chip a tooth. On the drive back, she'd fall asleep in the passenger seat, her cheeks smushed against the window, leaving faint fog prints I hated to wipe away. Through all of it, the notebook came with me. The little appointment card from the day she was born stayed too, tucked quietly behind my ID. Sometimes, when the bus was late or I was waiting in line at the pharmacy, I'd run my thumb over the edge of it through the plastic and remember that humming light, that slow, fast beep, that sense of almost losing everything before I even started. When she hit her teenage years, we clashed like flint and steel. She wanted brand-name jeans, a phone like her friends had, evenings out instead of helping me fold laundry. I wanted her to understand what it cost to give her even half of that. One night, she came home late smelling faintly of smoke and someone else's perfume. My hands were buried in a sink full of soapy water. The kitchen light, the same harsh overhead fixture we still have today, buzzed and flickered. It always seemed to flicker when I was at my worst. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "At Maya's," she said, eyes sliding away. "We were just hanging out. It's not a big deal." I saw the smudge of eyeliner under her eyes, the way her shoulders braced, expecting a fight. I dried my hands on my thighs, resisting the urge to slam a cabinet. "I'm not trying to ruin your life," I said, "but I need to know where you are. I only get one of you." She rolled her eyes, sighing dramatically. "You're so overprotective. None of my friends' moms act like this." Of course they didn't. None of her friends' moms were carrying around a folded hospital card that still smelled like fear from the day their daughters were born. None of them were watching their bank account dance on the edge of overdraft every month. She stomped off to her room. I stood alone in the kitchen, fingers wrinkled from dishes I'd forgotten to finish, the light above me humming softly as if it were trying to apologize. Years softened us both. She grew older, learned the price of groceries and health insurance. I grew quieter about my own sacrifices. Not because they mattered less, but because watching her slowly understand was both painful and strangely beautiful. When she met Jake, he was all politeness at first. He'd come over for dinner and offer to carry in the grocery bags, making small comments about the weight. He called me ma'am for the first 6 months, no matter how many times I told him to use my first name. I watched the way my daughter lit up around him, how she sat a little straighter at the table, how she laughed more easily. He worked in IT, he said. Good benefits, steady hours. I remember thinking, maybe she'll have it easier than I did. One evening, after they'd been dating about a year, I stumbled onto a conversation they were having in my driveway. I'd gone out to take the trash to the curb and paused when I heard their voices through the slightly open car door window. I just want things to be different for us, she was saying. I don't want to be exhausted all the time like Mom. I want balance. You will, he'd answered, voice warm. I'll take care of you. You won't have to worry about money. I remember standing there with a bag of trash in my hand, the cool night air smelling like cut grass and car exhaust, thinking how familiar those words sounded. I'll take care of you. I'd heard them once in a different mouth, in a different decade, before life sanded them down. When they got married, I gave them what little savings I'd managed to scrape together as a gift. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover a month's rent and a sofa that didn't come from the curb. I put the cash in an envelope and tucked it into her hand quietly, away from the crowd and the music and the clinking glasses. Use it for something that makes you breathe easier, I told her. She hugged me, mascara damp on my shoulder. You've already done too much, she said. I'll pay you back. I shook my head. That's not how this works. That night, after I got home and peeled off my shoes, I sat at the table with my old spiral notebook. The cover was more worn now, corners curling. I opened it and wrote one last line. Wedding gift, $1,500. Worth every penny. Then I closed it and put it away in the back of a drawer. For the first time in decades, I didn't need to track every cent. My job, I thought, was almost done. Of course, that's not how life works. When she told me she was trying for a baby, we were sitting in the same kitchen, the same buzzing light overhead, steam curling up from our mugs. She said it quickly, almost shyly, like she was testing how it sounded out loud. We've been trying, she said, thumb circling the rim of her cup. We think it's time. I watched her face carefully, searching for any hint of doubt, any shadow of fear. Instead, I saw excitement, a softness around the eyes that made her look, for a moment, like that little girl standing on a chair watching snow fall. Are you ready? I asked. She nodded, then laughed a little. I don't know if anyone is ever ready, but I feel as ready as I'll ever be. Later that night, alone in my bedroom, I opened the old box at the back of my closet where I kept things I couldn't throw away. It smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Inside, on top of baby clothes and a pair of tiny socks, lay the hospital bracelet from when she was born, the plastic still cloudy, my name fading. Beneath it, folded in half, was that appointment card from all those years ago. The ink had blurred slightly, but the date was still visible. I ran my thumb along the crease, feeling again the weight of that day, the way the whole world had seemed to shrink to the size of her lungs. I thought about throwing it away then, closing that circle, telling myself that chapter was over. Instead, I slipped the card back into my wallet behind my license, where it had lived for so long. Habit, maybe, or something else. Some quiet part of me that knew the fear of losing a child never really leaves. It just learns to sit quieter. When she called 3 weeks later, voice pitched high with disbelief and joy, telling me the test was positive, I pressed my hand against that spot in my wallet without thinking. The plastic warmed under my fingers. I didn't know, standing in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear and her laughter spilling through the line, that the same small, creased card that had watched me fight for her would soon become something I'd consider showing her husband, as proof of a battle he knew nothing about and didn't seem interested in understanding. I didn't show him that card. Instead, I slid my wallet back into my purse and went over to my daughter's place the next morning with a bag of groceries and a knot in my stomach that wouldn't untie. The hall outside her apartment smelled like cooked onions and old carpet. When she opened the door, she was still in pajamas, hair pulled into a loose bun, shadows under her eyes like bruises. The living room was dim, even though every light was on, that same tired glow stretching over the couch, the table, the pile of laundry she hadn't folded. "Did you sleep?" I asked. "Not really," she said. "He kept texting until 2 in the morning, then stopped." That last part seemed to hurt more than the rest. She handed me her phone without my asking. The screen was a thread of messages, blue bubbles stacked on top of each other. Jake, "I'm still hurt." Jake, "I don't know if I can look at you the same way." Jake, "You don't understand how much pressure I'm under." Jake, "Mom says I need to protect myself from your moods." Then a gap, no reply since 2:04 a.m. "He hasn't answered anything I sent back," she said quietly. "I feel like I'm talking into a void." "What did you say?" I asked. She scrolled up, thumb trembling. Her messages were longer, spilling over the screen. "I'm sorry if I said it in a way that hurt you. I didn't say I regretted the baby. I love this baby. I just need you to understand I'm really not feeling well. Please come home. I can't sleep without you here." He'd read them. The little seen mark sat there like a smirk. He just hadn't responded. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Silence is its own kind of sentence. "Did his mother call again?" I asked. She nodded. She said she wants to meet for lunch, to clear the air. Her attempt at mimicking the older woman's tone was half-hearted, bitter. "She said I should bring you. She thinks maybe you can talk sense into me." "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow," she said, "at that cafe near their house. The cafe they like to take pictures in, with the big windows and the plants hanging from the ceiling, where everything looks soft and curated. I'd never been invited there before." "I'll come," I said. She sank back on the couch, pressing a hand to her forehead. "I feel sick." "Sit," I told her, already moving to the kitchen. "I'll make you some toast." The sink was full of dishes, a pot with dried sauce crusted around the rim, 2 bowls with cereal residue, a knife smeared with peanut butter. It looked like my kitchen had looked in those overwhelming years, except there was no second adult here who had stepped in to pick up the slack. I rolled up my sleeves and turned on the water. As it warmed, I heard her in the living room, retching softly into the small trash can. The sound made my jaw clench. When the toast popped up, I put a little butter on it, the way she liked as a child, and brought it to her on a plate. She tried to smile. "Thanks," she murmured. "Sorry it's such a mess." "Stop apologizing," I said. "You're growing a human." Her phone vibrated again on the table. We both looked at it at the same time, as if it might explode. This time, it was a group message. His family chat. Jake's sister. "We're planning the baby shower, Jake's mother. We were thinking of having it at our house. Easier for everyone. Another relative. So exciting. Can't wait to celebrate Mama-to-be." Then, from his mother, "Of course, we'll handle most of the organizing. Given your emotional state, maybe keep your tasks simple. Just show up, look pretty, and don't cause drama." A second later, a follow-up. "And tell your mom she's welcome to bring baked goods if she wants to contribute." My daughter's cheeks flushed. "Do you see how she says things?" she whispered. "She makes it sound like a favor, but it's not. I don't know." It was a slap in a silk glove. That's what it was. "Do you want this baby shower there?" I asked. She hesitated. "I just want some part of this to feel normal, to feel happy." She sounded so small when she said it. I didn't trust myself to respond right then. I just sat with her until she managed to eat half the toast, then pretended I didn't see her slip to the bathroom 10 minutes later and quietly throw up what little she'd kept down. The next day, we went to the cafe. The space was all soft, neutral colors and hanging greenery, the air scented with coffee and something sweet. Big windows let in winter light that looked warm but wasn't. Couples sat at tiny round tables, leaning close over laptops and pastries. His mother was already there, sitting straight-backed at a table near the center, where everyone walking in could see her. She wore a fitted blazer and a string of pearls that caught the light. Her phone lay on the table next to her like a small silver weapon. "Finally," she said as we approached, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "We were starting to think you'd changed your mind." I noticed Jake's sister at the next table over, pretending to scroll her phone, ear angled toward us. Two of their cousins sat nearby with coffees, talking quietly, but glancing over often enough that it was obvious this wasn't exactly a private meeting. My daughter sank into the chair opposite her mother-in-law. I sat beside her, the wooden seat hard under my hips. "You look tired," his mother said immediately, tilting her head. "Pregnancy taking a toll already?" There was sympathy in the words, but somehow it flattened my daughter instead of lifting her. "I've been a little sick," my daughter said, managing a polite smile. His mother waved a manicured hand. "All women are tired. That's not an excuse to treat my son the way you did." The words landed on the table with a dull thud. A waiter came by, pad in hand. "Can I get you something to drink?" My daughter hesitated. "Just water, please." His mother raised an eyebrow. "Make that hot water with lemon. Caffeine is not great this early. You should know that." She looked at me as if expecting me to agree. "I just asked for coffee." We sat in a brief, brittle silence while the waiter walked away. In that silence, I could hear the hum of conversation around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups. It all felt very far away. "I spoke to Jake," his mother said finally, leaning forward. "He's devastated. He came here the other night crying, saying you wished you'd never gotten pregnant with his child." My daughter's eyes widened. "That's not what I said." "It's how he heard it," she replied. "And that's what matters. Men are fragile, whether you like it or not. As women, our job is to support them, not tear them down." There it was, the expectation wrapped in a lecture. "I told him," his mother continued, "that this could be a turning point, that you could either apologize, grow up, and accept your role as wife and mother, or—" "Well," she shrugged, letting the implication hang in the air. "Or what?" I asked quietly. She turned her gaze on me, that polite smile snapping back into place. "Or he'll have decisions to make. I don't want my son trapped in a marriage where he's disrespected." The lemon water arrived, the steam rising between us. My daughter wrapped her hands around the mug as if she needed something to hold on to. Her knuckles were white. "I yelled," she said. "I shouldn't have yelled. I was hurt. But he works hard," his mother cut in. "He provides. All he asks is that you keep the home running. That's not abuse. That's partnership." The word hung there, warped. "And refusing to help her when she's sick?" I asked, talking to her like she's small, telling her her feelings don't matter. His mother's smile thinned. "You're interpreting it emotionally. I'm speaking practically. Feelings are fleeting. Bills are not." She gestured around at the cafe. "You see these people. You think any of their lives work if someone doesn't put feelings aside and do the work?" A laugh burst from the next table. One of the cousins had seen something on her phone. They glanced over, then back down, whispering. I felt the heat of being observed, of being used for entertainment. "Jake is not perfect," his mother went on. "No man is, but he's a good provider. He doesn't drink, he doesn't cheat, he doesn't run around. You'd be surprised how many women would be grateful for that." It was a subtle cut, but it landed like a slap. Be grateful. Don't complain. It could be worse. My daughter swallowed hard. "I'm grateful," she said, voice shaking. I need help, too." "You have no job," his mother replied. "You're in school," she added, fingers curling in air quotes. which is admirable. But let's not pretend you're working 12-hour shifts. Your job is the house. She sat back. If you can't manage that now, how will you manage a baby? This time, the silence felt like a chokehold. My daughter's eyes darted to me, asking without words if I was going to step in. I felt my hand tremble under the table. I folded it over my knee so she wouldn't see. I managed, his mother added, almost as an afterthought. 3 kids, part-time job, no help. We didn't sit around talking about our feelings. We got on with it. The old story, polished and weaponized. The waiter came by to refill water. The conversation paused, but the weight didn't lift. When he left, my daughter finally spoke. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, the words barely above a whisper. His mother's eyes softened, but it wasn't a kind softness. It was the softness of someone who just won. "I want you," she said, "to call my son, apologize properly, not that half-hearted thing you texted, and promise him you understand your place in this marriage, that you will not use pregnancy as an excuse to slack or disrespect him, that you will make our family proud, not embarrassed." Our family, I noted. Somehow, we'd been shifted to the outside of something we were supposed to be part of. "And if she doesn't?" I asked. His mother looked past me as if she'd grown bored. "Then Jake will make his own choices. We'll support whatever he decides." The cousins at the nearby table were openly watching now, faces carefully blank. My daughter's cheeks burned. This, right here, was its own kind of public humiliation. A performance disguised as a conversation. On the drive back to my daughter's apartment, she stared out the window, one hand on her stomach. The late afternoon sky was that gray blue that promises snow without delivering it. The heater wheezed. "I feel like I'm failing some test no one told me about," she said suddenly. "Like there's this invisible list and I'm just crossing things off wrong." "You're not failing," I said. "They're moving the goalposts." She laughed once, a harsh, short sound. "And if I say that, I'm dramatic." That evening, Jake finally replied. He didn't call. He sent a long message. "Mom told me you met. She said you understand now. I need to see real change. No more yelling, no more questioning my decisions. You need to prove you can handle things without dumping your emotions on me all the time. I'll come home this weekend if I see you're serious. Until then, I need space." At the end, one line that made my eyes narrow. "Dad agrees with me." His father, who'd barely spoken to my daughter except to ask about football or comment on the weather, had suddenly become a silent judge of her character. "Do I respond?" she asked me, biting her lip. "What do I say?" "If you answer right now," I said, "you'll say what they want to hear just to stop the anxiety. Maybe wait, breathe, eat something, then decide." She nodded, but I could see the urge in her fingers, the way they twitched toward the phone again and again. Over the next few days, the pattern cemented itself. If she texted him in the morning, he might reply at night. If she sent a long message explaining how sick she felt, he'd answer with 2 words: "You'll manage." Once, when she told him she'd nearly fainted while walking down the stairs because she hadn't kept anything down all day, he replied, "This is what you signed up for." Another time, she sent him a photo of a sonogram appointment card on the fridge. The ink still fresh, the date circled. He answered hours later, "Can't get off work that day, take your mom." It was a small blow, but it left a mark. Meanwhile, his family group chat kept buzzing. Jake's sister. "We picked the colors for the baby shower, navy and gold for our little prince." Jake's mother. "We'll host at our place. Our backyard is much nicer. Your mom can help set up tables." Relative. "Can't wait to see you glowing, Mama." And then, threaded through all the excitement, small jabs. His mother. "Just remember, being a good mother starts now." No more "I'm tired" excuses. His sister. "You can rest after the baby is born." "Oh wait, no you can't." My daughter showed me the messages with a tight smile, as if sharing a bad joke she didn't know how to laugh at. I feel like they're all circling, she said, like vultures waiting to see if I'll drop the ball. At home, I found myself digging through the drawer where I'd left my old spiral notebook. The cover was more brittle now, the pages yellowing. I flipped past the old entries, diapers, field trips, late fees, until I found a blank page near the back. In the margin, I wrote, "If she leaves, what does she need?" Then I started listing. Savings, a safe place to stay, legal advice, emotional support, childcare. The numbers I wrote beside each item were not encouraging. My hand shook a little as I added them up. I pressed my palm flat on the page until the tremor stopped. A few evenings later, I stopped by her apartment unannounced with a pot of soup. The hallway smelled of someone's burnt dinner. When she opened the door, she looked worse. Paler, eyes dull, shoulders slumped. "Did you eat today?" I asked. "Toast," she said. "Half of it stayed down." As I ladled soup into bowls, I noticed a trash bag tied up near the door, full and sagging. Next to it, a box of baby books sat unopened, still in the shipping carton, his name on the label. "He ordered those when we first started trying," she said when she saw me looking, "back when it was exciting." She glanced at the box as if it belonged to someone else. We sat at the table with our soup. The light above us flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale, cold glow over the bowls. The steam curled upward, catching the light like thin ghosts. Her phone lit again. Another message from his mother. Reminder. "Family dinner at our house Sunday. We'll discuss next steps. Don't be late, and please, no mood swings this time. Jake needs peace, not more stress." My daughter locked the screen without opening it. "I don't want to go," she said. "I know they're going to talk about me like I'm not there." "Then don't," I said. "If I don't," she replied, "they'll say I'm isolating myself, that I'm being difficult, that I'm making him choose between me and them." She wasn't wrong. On Sunday, I went with her. Their house was larger than anything I'd ever owned, all clean lines and tasteful decorations. The entryway smelled like some expensive candle, vanilla, maybe, and something floral. Family photos lined the hallway. Jake as a boy, Jake at graduation, Jake at his first job. My daughter appeared only in the more recent frames, standing slightly to the side, smiling wide. In the dining room, a long table was set with matching plates and cloth napkins folded into neat triangles. Jake's parents, his sister, and 2 aunts were already seated. He stood at the far end of the table, hands in his pockets, not moving toward us. "Finally," his mother said, "we're all here." We took our seats near the middle of the table. I ended up directly under a recessed ceiling light that cast a hard beam down on me, making me feel like I was on stage. The food looked perfect. Roast chicken, roasted vegetables, a salad with some kind of fancy dressing. "Before we eat," his mother said, picking up her wine glass, "I think we should talk." My daughter's fork froze halfway to her plate. Jake cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what I need," he said, "about what I can and can't tolerate in this marriage." He spoke like he was giving a presentation at work. "I can't live with constant yelling," he continued, "with disrespect, with someone who crumbles the minute things get hard. I need a partner who's strong. My mother has been very clear with me about that." His mother nodded, lips pressed in a proud line. "I'm not crumbling," my daughter said, voice small. "I'm pregnant, I'm sick, I'm trying." His father, who'd been silent up to now, finally spoke, cutting across her words. "When I came home tired," he said, "your mother never complained. She didn't expect me to scrub floors after a 12-hour shift. She knew her place. That's why we lasted." The table went very quiet. It was a humiliation wrapped in nostalgia, offered up like wisdom. "I'm not asking him to scrub floors," my daughter whispered. Jake's sister leaned back, arms crossed. "Honestly, it's not that complicated," she said. "You wanted this baby. You knew what pregnancy would be like. You don't get to change all the rules halfway through and throw tantrums." The word tantrums made my daughter flinch. I watched her shoulders curl inward, like she was trying to take up less space. Jake's mother dabbed at the corner of her mouth with her napkin, though she hadn't eaten yet. "We're saying this because we care," she said. "We want this marriage to work, but it will not work if you think you can manipulate our son with tears and threats." "I didn't threaten him," my daughter said, a little louder now. "I said I wished I'd known how he really felt before I got pregnant. That's not a threat, that's regret about not seeing him clearly." Jake's jaw tightened. "You said you wished you hadn't gotten pregnant with my baby." "I didn't," she insisted. His mother sighed. "Intent versus impact, dear. You may not have meant it that way, but that's how he felt. That's what you need to fix." Another silence. This one stretched long enough that I could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the house, counting off seconds that felt like hours. I could also hear my own heartbeat, steady but hard. My daughter's voice cracked. She swallowed. "I'm sorry that I hurt you," she said, looking at Jake. "I shouldn't have yelled. I was scared and sick and I felt alone. But I love this baby. I love you. I just need you to love me when I'm not convenient." The last sentence slipped out like it had been waiting. For a moment, no one moved. Jake's eyes flickered, but whatever softness might have surfaced disappeared under the weight of all the opinions around him. "You need to show me," he said stiffly. "Words are easy." His mother nodded approvingly. "Actions, not tears. That's how you prove yourself." I looked around the table, at the polished cutlery, the curated artwork on the walls, the faces that all seemed to share the same expression of patient judgment, and realized how outnumbered my daughter was. Under the table, her hand found mine. I felt the faint tremor in her fingers, the small squeeze as if she were asking, silently, if she was really as weak as they were making her feel. I squeezed back. As the roast chicken was passed around and conversation shifted to safer topics, the weather, someone's promotion, vacation plans, I watched my daughter stare at her plate. The smell of food made her grimace. "Eat," Jake murmured under his breath. "You don't want people to think you're starving our child." It was a joke on the surface. Underneath, it wasn't. She lifted her fork with effort, taking a tiny bite of chicken. I saw her throat work as she forced it down. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom. In the hallway, the family photos watched me pass. In the mirror, under the bright vanity light, I looked older than I had that morning. Lines carved deeper around my eyes, jaw set tight. I opened my wallet without really thinking and pulled out the old appointment card from when my daughter was born. The paper was soft now. The ink faded. I held it between my fingers, imagining laying it on their polished table, telling them, "This is where it began for me. This is why I am the way I am." Instead, I folded it again and put it back. When I returned to the dining room, Jake was telling a story about a co-worker who took paternity leave. 2 weeks off just to bond with the baby, he said, rolling his eyes. Meanwhile, the rest of us pick up the slack. His father laughed. "In my day, we went back to work the next morning." His mother shook her head. "Modern men are so soft." My daughter looked down at her hands. I could see her calculating silently what that meant for her future. Would he be there in the sleepless nights, in the messy mornings, or would he be at work, then at his mother's table, telling stories about how burdensome it all was? On the drive home, it was snowing lightly, flakes swirling in the headlights. My daughter sat curled in the passenger seat, one arm wrapped around her stomach. "I feel like they're erasing me," she said softly, "like I'm being sanded down into whatever shape fits their family." I kept my eyes on the road. The wipers squeaked back and forth, back and forth. "Every time I speak up," she continued, "they tell me I'm overreacting. Every time I cry, they call it manipulation. Every time I ask for help, they say I'm weak." She laughed once, bitter. "Soon I'll stop asking. Then they'll say, I've become cold." The car's heater hummed, blowing warm air that somehow didn't reach the tightness in my chest. I keep thinking, she whispered, if I could just be quieter, easier, smaller, maybe he'd come home. Maybe they'd stop looking at me like I'm failing some invisible exam. Outside, the snow thickened, blurring the world into a white haze. As I peered through the windshield, my fingers gripping the wheel, one thought pressed so hard against the inside of my skull it almost slipped out of my mouth. If she keeps shrinking herself for them, how much of her will be left by the time this baby arrives? 3 days after that dinner, the snow turned to freezing rain, and my daughter called me from the parking lot outside her apartment, her voice thin and frayed. "Mom," she said, "I just threw up in the car, in my lap. I couldn't even make it upstairs." I was already reaching for my keys. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." The sky was a flat, colorless sheet, the kind that makes it impossible to tell what time it is. The roads were slick. Small rivers of slush running toward the drains. When I pulled into her complex, I spotted her immediately, sitting in the driver's seat of her old sedan, headlights off, shoulders shaking. I parked beside her and hurried over, cold air slapping my face. When she opened the door, the smell hit me. Stomach acid and shame mingled with the faint vanilla of the air freshener hanging from her mirror. "I'm sorry," she blurted, wiping at her cheeks with the back of her hand. "I couldn't move. I just sat here and cried." In her lap, a crumpled fast food napkin tried and failed to contain the mess. Her jeans were stained, her t-shirt spotted. Her seatbelt was still on. "You don't need to apologize," I said, already reaching for the pack of wipes I keep in my car. "Come on, let's get you upstairs. I'll deal with this." She stared at the steering wheel, not moving. "He texted 5 minutes ago," she whispered. "I told him I was sick again. He wrote back, 'You wanted this pregnancy.'" And then nothing. It was a small, sharp cut, another one in a series that were starting to blur together. "Unbuckle," I said gently. "Lean on me." Her legs wobbled as she stood. I felt the tremor run through her when she put her arm around my shoulder. The rain needled our faces as we shuffled toward the stairs, each step careful. My knees complained with every riser, but anger makes its own kind of strength. "The neighbors are watching," she muttered, eyes flicking to the windows we passed. "Let them," I said. "You're allowed to be human." Inside, the apartment was cold. The heat was technically on, but it felt like it was only doing the bare minimum. She went straight to the bathroom to change while I went back down, cleaned the worst of the mess from her car seat, and spread an old towel over it. When I came back up, she was sitting on the edge of the bed in fresh clothes, hair damp from where she'd splashed water on her face. The lights were off in the bedroom, the only illumination coming from the hallway, cool, bluish light pooling on the carpet. "I had a doctor's appointment this morning," she said. "He was supposed to come. We booked it weeks ago." "And?" I asked. She reached for her phone, thumb tapping quickly. She pulled up a text and held it out to me. "Jake, can't make it. Work is crazy. You know how it is. Just tell me if anything is wrong. Otherwise, don't stress me with details." "I sent him a picture of the sonogram," she said. "You can't really see much yet, but still." He wrote back a thumbs up. Just that, a tiny digital hand where a sentence should have been. The doctor's office had called me afterward, actually. My number was still on her emergency contact form. The nurse had asked, almost casually, if there was ongoing stress at home. Her blood pressure was a little elevated, she'd said. "Nothing dangerous yet, but we want to monitor it." And she seemed upset. I'd brushed it off, saying something about pregnancy hormones and family dynamics, promising we'd keep an eye on things. I'd hung up and told myself not to overreact. Sitting on the bed beside my daughter now, that phone screen between us, I felt the nurse's question echoing in my chest. "I can't keep up," my daughter whispered. "The house, my classes, the appointments, the texts from his family. I feel like I'm spinning plates and someone keeps adding more. And if I drop even one, they'll say, 'See? We were right about you.'" She looked at me then, eyes raw. "I don't know how much more I can take." Something inside me shifted. Not a crack this time. A click. I'd spent weeks trying to keep the peace, smoothing edges, thinking if we could just get through the first trimester, things would settle. That if I could explain her better to them, or them better to her, we might find some middle ground. But watching her sit there, shoulders hunched, one hand protectively over her belly, apologizing for the way her body was reacting to pregnancy, while her husband measured his inconvenience. The scales finally tipped. "This isn't working," I said quietly. She blinked. "You mean me and him?" "I mean this," I said, gesturing around. "You stuck here waiting for him to decide if he's going to show up. You running yourself into the ground to prove you're worthy of basic help. You being judged by people who don't lift a finger for you but feel entitled to tell you what kind of mother you'll be." Her throat bobbed. "What choice do I have?" "You have more than you think," I said, "and if you don't, we'll make some." She looked down at her hands. "Mom, if I go against him, his family will turn on me completely. They already think I'm difficult. They'll tell everyone I'm unstable, that I can't handle being a wife, let alone a mother." "They're already doing that," I replied. "The difference is right now, you're letting them write the story." Her phone chimed again. Another message from his mother. "He says you're still not taking responsibility. He's hurting. You need to stop playing the victim and think about what kind of mother you want to be." A second later. "We're talking about options. Don't make him regret choosing you." That one landed like a punch. My daughter's face crumpled, but no tears came. She just stared at the words, breath shallow. In that moment, I saw her not as the young woman they were trying to mold, but as the baby I'd once held under harsh hospital lights, wires attached to her tiny body, monitors beeping, my own hands shaking as I signed forms I barely understood. Back then, I'd have burned the entire world down to keep her safe. Had that changed just because she was grown? Because she wore a ring and carried another life inside her? No. I stood up. "Pack a bag," I said. She blinked. "What?" "Pack a bag." My voice was steady in a way that surprised even me. "Clothes for a few days, your prenatal vitamins, whatever assignments you absolutely need. We'll come back for the rest. You're coming to my house." Fear flashed across her face, followed by something else, relief so stark it made her shoulders slump. "What will I tell him?" she whispered. "Whatever you want," I said, "or nothing. But you're not staying here alone while he sits at his mother's house, letting her fire texts at you like bullets." Her phone lit again as if to prove my point. "Jake, Mom says you're still making excuses. I can't do this drama. I'll come home when you've calmed down and accepted how things have to be." There it was. The script, clear as day. She stared at the message, then looked up at me. "He'll say I ran away," she murmured. "He'll say I'm being irrational, that you're interfering." "Let him," I said. "I've been called worse for less." Her lips trembled in the ghost of a smile. She moved slowly at first, as if waiting for someone to burst in and tell her she wasn't allowed. But once she started putting clothes into a duffel bag, small practical questions replaced some of the fear. "Should I bring my textbooks?" "Yes." "What about the baby books, if you want them?" She hesitated, then left the shipping box where it was. In the kitchen, I grabbed some snacks, her medications, the folder with her medical forms. On autopilot, I checked the stove, the outlets, the windows. Years of leaving apartments had trained my body to move even while my mind raced. On the fridge, the ultrasound appointment card was held up by a magnet shaped like a little sun. I took it and slid it into my purse, next to the old folded card from decades ago. 2 small rectangles of paper pressed together, one from when she came into my life, one marking the life she was trying to bring in. As we were about to leave, her phone rang. Jake. She froze in the doorway, bag strap across her shoulder. "Do you want to answer?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. The phone rang and rang. Finally, on the last tone, she hit accept and held it to her ear, speaker off this time. "Hello?" Her voice wobbled. His tone was brisk, controlled. "So, have you had time to think?" "I've been sick," she said. "I had an appointment." You keep saying that," he cut in. "Sick, tired, emotional. I'm tired too. I'm sick of the constant drama. Mom says you're still playing the victim. Are you ready to apologize properly or not?" Her hand tightened on the bag strap. I could see the old instinct rising in her, the one that wanted to fold, to say whatever would stop the shaking in her chest. I put my hand lightly on her back. She inhaled slowly. "I'm going to my mom's for a while," she said. Silence crackled through the phone line. "What?" he said finally. "I'm not okay," she continued, voice steadier now. "I need support, real support, not lectures, not group calls where everyone tells me I'm failing. I'm pregnant and I'm scared. And you left." Another silence. Longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning on the other end, the indignation building. "So you're running away," he said flatly, "proving everyone right." "I'm choosing somewhere I'm not called lazy for throwing up," she replied. "If that proves something to you, maybe you should think about what?" His breath hissed into the phone. "You are making a very big mistake. And if you walk out like this, my mother is done with you. Don't expect her to welcome you back." "I didn't marry your mother," she said softly. He laughed once, cold. "You married into this family. That includes her, whether you like it or not." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm leaving." The line went dead. For a moment, all I could hear was the blood roaring in my ears and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Then my daughter turned to me, eyes wide as if she couldn't quite believe what she'd just said out loud. "Is this really happening?" she whispered. I opened the door to the gray, wet afternoon, the air sharp on my face. "Yes," I said, "it is. And once you step over this threshold, we're not going back to pretending." When my daughter stepped through my front door with that duffel bag slung over her shoulder, the house felt different, like it took a breath it hadn't realized it was holding. The entryway light was warm, softer than the harsh bulbs in her apartment, and for a moment she just stood there, staring at the coat hooks, the familiar shoe rack, the faint lavender smell I always kept in the hallway. "Sit," I said gently. "I'll make tea." She sank onto the sofa, hands clasped in her lap. Her posture was careful, as if she were afraid the wrong movement might unravel her. Outside, the rain tapped against the windows in thin, uneven lines. The sky had settled into a muted gray that made the lamps inside seem brighter than usual. As I filled the kettle, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, though I didn't need to guess who it was. "He told us you took her. You're making everything worse. A mother should teach her daughter how to be a wife, not poison her marriage." I didn't show her that one. In the living room, she pulled a blanket over her knees, her fingers twisting a loose thread. Her hair was still damp from her earlier shower, the ends sticking to her shirt. "You're safe here," I said, handing her the tea. "Whatever happens next, we go one step at a time." She nodded, but the worry didn't leave her eyes. "I know he's angry," she said, "and I know his family is probably organizing some group intervention or something. But the worst part is I don't know what they're planning. I don't know what they're telling him about me." Her voice broke on the last word. I sat beside her. "We don't have to guess," I said. "We can focus on what you need." She let out a slow breath. "I need space," she murmured. Then after a pause, "I need clarity." Clarity. A quiet word, but a brave one. That night, she stayed in the guest room, the same room where she'd slept after her high school prom, after her first breakup, after wisdom teeth removal. The sheets were freshly laundered, the quilt heavy enough to feel grounding. I lay awake longer than usual, listening to the house settle around us. The refrigerator hummed, the wind nudged the side of the house, and somewhere in the walls the heating ducts clicked as warm air moved through them. It was the same soundtrack I'd slept under for years, but it felt different knowing she was under my roof again, carrying a life inside her and a storm behind her. Just before midnight, her phone buzzed in the hallway, then again and again. The sound seeped beneath my door like a distress signal. I didn't get up. She needed the silence more than she needed the answers on that screen. In the morning, the messages were waiting. Jake, you can't just leave in the middle of an argument. Jake, my family is worried. They say you're being manipulated. Jake, you're scaring me with this behavior. Jake, if you don't come home, I don't know what will happen to us. The final one read, Mom thinks you're not emotionally stable right now. She says pregnancy hormones can make some women unpredictable. We should consider whether you're fit to make decisions alone. My daughter handed me the phone with a hollow laugh. Apparently, I'm dangerous now. He's fishing, I said. Trying different angles to see what pulls you back. But what if he really believes it? She asked. What if he tells people I'm unfit? What if he... The fear in her voice trailed off, but I knew exactly where her thoughts had gone. Custody, control, narrative. Let's not jump there yet, I said. Right now, your job is to breathe, eat, rest, and get steady again. She nodded, but her fingers still shook when she picked up her tea. Later that morning, I found her in the kitchen reading through an old binder from school, pages curled at the edges. She'd spread her textbooks across the table, a quiet, determined chaos. I emailed my professors, she said. Told them I'm going through a family emergency. They said they'll work with me. That's good, I said. She looked down at the page. I don't want to fall behind. I'm already scared I won't graduate before the baby comes. You will, I said, one step at a time. It became our unofficial rule for the next few days. She made small lists. I made bigger ones. She rested. I cooked. She cried quietly into her pillow one afternoon, thinking I didn't hear. I pretended I didn't. Some grief needs privacy. At night, she'd sit beside me on the sofa with a blanket wrapped around her legs while I read articles on my phone about pregnancy nausea remedies, ginger, B6, small meals every 2 hours, but mostly she needed calm, stability. Jake's messages didn't stop. They came in waves. You're being dramatic. Everyone is talking about this now. Do you really want people knowing you walked out? I'm embarrassed for you. Come home so we can fix this before it gets worse. Each one had the same undercurrent, pressure disguised as concern. His mother sent her own stream. You're abandoning your husband. You're making the family look dysfunctional. Pregnancy is not a disability. If you can't handle a little stress now, how will you raise a child? At one point, his sister wrote, Jake deserves peace. If you can't give him that, maybe you should rethink motherhood entirely. That one nearly made me snap my phone in half. On the third evening, as I was sorting through the mail, a soft knock came from the guest room. My daughter stepped out, pale but composed. Mom, she said, I think I need to talk to someone, a professional, a counselor maybe. The admission was quiet, vulnerable. I nodded. I can help find someone. She exhaled shakily. And I think I need documentation of what's been happening. Just in case. Just in case. Preparedness is its own form of courage. We'll gather everything, I said. Every message, every call, anything that matters. And we did. That night, while she slept, I sat at the kitchen table sorting through screenshots she'd forwarded to me. I printed them, one by one. His words, his mother's words, his sister's, the timestamps, the pattern. The printer hummed, a slow mechanical rhythm. Each sheet slid out warm and thin, the ink still damp in places. I spread them across the table in careful rows. My old spiral notebook was tucked beside me, repurposed after so many years into something new. A record, a timeline, a truth he couldn't twist. As I worked, I felt a quiet steadiness settle in my bones, a heat that wasn't anger exactly, just a rising certainty. For so long, I had carried my daughter's life in the pages of that notebook, her needs, our survival. Now I was carrying her again, but differently. This time, the weight wasn't hers. It was mine to lift. The next morning, she found me still at the table. "Mom," she whispered, "you didn't sleep." "I will," I said, "but first we're going to make sure you're protected." She looked at the piles of printed messages, the organized folders, the bookmarked pages on my laptop. Her eyes filled, not with fear this time, but something like gratitude. "You don't think I'm overreacting?" she asked in a small voice. I put my hand over hers. "I think you've been underreacting for a long time." Her breath shook out in a slow, quiet release. That afternoon, Jake called again. This time, instead of the usual script, his tone was sharper. "You can't just take my wife," he said. "Mom says you're turning her against me. She's crying every night. This is your fault." My daughter stood beside me in the kitchen, arms wrapped around herself. "I left because I wasn't safe emotionally," she said. "Not because of my mom." "You're fine," he snapped. "You're just overwhelmed." She looked down. "I'm pregnant. Overwhelmed is normal. What's not normal is being told I'm weak for being sick." "We'll talk when you come home," he said. "Not like this. Not with your mother listening." She didn't answer. He continued, voice cooling. "Mom wants to have a family meeting this weekend. You need to show up. We'll settle this as a group." "No," she said quietly. "No more group meetings." "You don't get to say no," he replied. "This family has expectations." She hung up before he finished the sentence. Her hand trembled afterward. Whether from fear or relief, I couldn't tell. "One step at a time," I reminded myself. But the line between step and turning point is thinner than most people realize. That night, as she brushed her teeth in the bathroom, her reflection small in the mirror, she called out suddenly, "Mom? Yes?" She stepped into the doorway, toothbrush in hand, eyes wide with something new. "I don't think I want to go back." 3 beats of silence passed between us. Not fear, not panic, something steadier, something awakening. She swallowed hard. "But if I don't go back," she whispered, "I don't know what comes next." From the living room, the printer hummed to life as another document finished printing. I looked at her, really looked at her. The exhaustion in her shoulders, the faint nausea still hovering around the edges of her voice, the fragile courage building like a spine inside her. "You don't have to know," I said softly. "You just have to keep walking forward." She nodded slowly, but before she could speak again, her phone vibrated on the counter. A new message. From Jake. But this one was different. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a guilt trip. It wasn't a half apology. It was a single sentence that made the air in the room shift. "We need to talk. I'm coming over." He didn't knock like a man unsure of his welcome. He knocked like he still believed this was his house, his domain, his right. 3 sharp raps on the front door, knuckles hard against wood. My daughter flinched on the sofa, her hand flying instinctively to her belly. The lamp beside us cast a warm circle of light, but it suddenly felt too bright, as if it were exposing every crack in the room. "Do you want me to get it?" I asked. She nodded, throat bobbing. "Please don't let him in if you're not here," she murmured. "I don't want to be alone with him right now." "I won't leave you," I said. I smoothed my shirt, more for something to do than anything else, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw him, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, coat dusted with the remnants of freezing rain. Behind him, the sky was already dark, streetlights turning the wet pavement into streaks of dull gold. I opened the door halfway. The cold rushed in, sliding around my ankles. "Jake," I said. "We need to talk," he replied. His eyes flicked past me, scanning the living room. "Where is she?" "Inside," I said. "Sitting down." "Where you left her, except she's under my roof now." He exhaled sharply, a humorless sound. "Can I come in?" he asked, though it didn't sound like a question he expected to be answered with no. "Yes," I said, "but we're doing this my way." His eyebrows rose, but he stepped over the threshold. He smelled faintly of cologne and the damp wool of his coat. Drops of melted sleet glistened on his shoulders. In the living room, my daughter sat straight on the sofa, blanket folded carefully beside her as if she'd been rehearsing this moment. The printer sheets and folders were stacked neatly on the coffee table, next to a glass of water. He paused when he saw the papers. A quick flicker of something, wariness maybe, passed over his face before his expression smoothed. "This looks formal," he said. "Sit down," I said. He took the armchair across from her instead of the empty space beside her on the sofa. That small distance, the stripe of carpet between them, felt wider than any highway. Up close, I could see faint shadows under his eyes, the tightness in his mouth. Whether from guilt, stress, or simple annoyance, I couldn't tell. "You said you wanted to talk," my daughter began. Her voice trembled on the first word, then leveled. "So talk." He looked at her, and for a moment the mask slipped. There was something like fear there. Then it hardened again. "You left," he said. "You walked out in the middle of a fight and ran to your mother's house. Do you know what that did to me? To my family?" "I left," she said, "after you told me my feelings didn't matter, that nothing would change while I was pregnant, and that my job was to shut up and do the work. I left because I was drowning." He gave a small, dismissive huff. "You're exaggerating." My hand tightened around the edge of the side table. "Let's not do this with memories," I said evenly. I reached for the top stack of papers and held them up. "Let's do it with your own words." His gaze darted to the pages, then back to me. "What is this?" "Screenshots," I said. "Texts you sent her, texts your mother and sister sent her, the timelines, the patterns. I printed them all." His jaw dropped slightly. "You've been spying on our conversations?" "She showed me," I said, because she was starting to believe she might be crazy. I wanted to see for myself whether she was or whether you were training her to think she was. He shifted in his seat, shoulders tightening. "This is between husband and wife," he said. "You inserting yourself is exactly the problem. My mother said—" "Your mother has been saying a lot of things," I cut in. "We'll get there." My daughter looked at me, then at the papers. Her cheeks were pale, but there was a glint of something in her eyes I hadn't seen in weeks. Recognition. Recognition that she wasn't facing this alone. I laid the first sheet on the coffee table. "Let's start small," I said. "The night with the lights." He rolled his eyes. "You're still on about that?" "It's a pattern, not a night," I said. "She asked you to turn off the lights because she was nauseous and exhausted. You said, 'No, this is what is expected of you every night.' Those were your exact words." His lips pressed together. "I was tired. I work long hours. I can't cater to every whim just because she didn't ask you for a vacation," I said softly. "She asked you to flip a switch." The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the heater. "I was setting boundaries," he said. "My father always said—" "Your father also said your mother knew her place," I said. "I heard him at that dinner." Color rose in his cheeks. My daughter spoke up. "It wasn't just that," she said. "It was what you said after, that nothing would change, that I was still expected to do everything every day, no matter how I felt, that if you babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother." He glanced at her, then away. "I was trying to motivate you," he muttered. "Pregnancy is hard. You can't go into it weak. Calling me lazy when I can't stop throwing up isn't motivation," she said quietly. "It's cruelty." He flinched at the word. "You're twisting this," he said. I slid another paper toward him. "Is she twisting this too?" I asked. On the page, his texts from the night she threw up in the car were printed in crisp black ink. "You wanted this pregnancy. You keep saying you're sick. You're fine. You're just overwhelmed. I'm sick of the constant drama." He scanned the words, his mouth tightening. "You're taking everything out of context," he said. "You don't see the bigger picture. She's been emotional. saying hurtful things, saying she wished she'd known how I really felt before getting pregnant. You have no idea what that did to me." "You cried," my daughter said softly. "You left, you went straight to your mother's house, and then they called me on speaker to tell me what a disappointment I was." His gaze jumped to her. "They were defending me. They were attacking me," she replied. "Your mother said I was ungrateful. Your sister called me lazy. They said if I couldn't handle a few chores, I wasn't ready to be a mother, and you stood there and let them." "I didn't tell them what to say," he protested. "You didn't tell them to stop either," I said. The lamplight carved a sharp line down one side of his face. He looked suddenly younger, like a boy caught with something he didn't know how to put down. "You ran away," he said to my daughter, clinging to the one accusation that seemed to give him power. "You left instead of talking it out like an adult. That's not how marriage works." She reached for one of the pages and slid it toward him. It was from his mother. "If you don't fix this, he's staying here where he's respected. We won't let you destroy him with your dramatics. You will call and apologize. You will tell him you were wrong." "Our last adult talk," my daughter said, "was your family staging a public tribunal at your parents' dinner table while I sat there trying not to throw up. Your mother decided I was on trial. You let her." "That's not what that was," he said sharply. "What was it then?" I asked. Because from where I sat, it looked like a group performance about how she needed to earn the right to basic kindness. His mouth opened, then closed. The silence stretched. I picked up the folder with the medical papers and set it gently on the table. "Her doctor called me," I said. "Blood pressure elevated, nausea severe. Ongoing stress at home," she said. "We're concerned." "Do you know what chronic stress does to a pregnancy?" "Jake?" He looked at the folder as if it were something explosive. "You're trying to scare me," he said. "I'm trying to make you see what you've been refusing to see," I replied. "This isn't just about hurt feelings. It's about the fact that your words and your silence are sitting in her bloodstream right now, wrapped around your child." That line seemed to land somewhere deeper than the others. He swallowed. "She told you she was scared and sick," I continued. "You told her, this is what you signed up for. She told you she nearly fainted on the stairs. You said, you'll manage. You skipped the sonogram and sent a thumbs up. She showed up to your family dinners and got lectures about knowing her place." My voice stayed steady, but inside, something burned. He rubbed his jaw, eyes darting between the papers and my daughter's face. "You're ganging up on me," he said. "You and my wife. No wonder my mother—" "Your mother isn't in this room," I said. "Right now, it's you, the woman carrying your child, and the evidence of how you've treated her since she told you she was pregnant." "That's it." My daughter took a breath, then exhaled slowly. Her hands had stopped shaking. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. "I didn't leave to punish you," she said. "I left because I was starting to disappear. Every time I cried, your family called me manipulative. Every time I asked for help, they called me weak. Every time I tried to explain, you told me I was dramatic. I started to believe them. I started to think maybe I was a bad wife, a bad future mother, because I couldn't keep a smile glued to my face while I felt like I was falling apart." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I need someone," she continued, "who sees that pregnancy isn't a character flaw, who doesn't measure my worth by how many chores I can do when I'm vomiting in my lap in a parking lot." He stared at her, mouth pressed into a thin line. "So what?" he asked finally. "You're saying I'm a monster?" "No," she said. "I'm saying you've been cruel, consistently, and I can't bring a baby into a home where their father thinks empathy is optional work he can clock into or out of." The words hung between them like heavy drapes. His hand flexed on the armrest. "You've been talking to people," he said slowly. "A counselor, a lawyer, someone. I can hear it in the way you're talking." "Yes," she said simply. He stiffened. "So this is a setup." "It's protection," I said. "For her, and for that baby." he scoffed. But the sound was thin. You think you can just, what, take my child, take my family, turn her against me, and walk away like you've won something? I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, the appointment card from decades ago a small weight in my pocket. I don't want to take anything, I said, but I will do whatever is necessary to make sure my grandchild is not raised in a house where their mother is told her pain is laziness and her fear is drama. Then I said the line that made even the heater seem to go quiet. If this is how you treat her before she's even given birth, I said softly, a judge will be very interested to see how you plan to treat your child. The room froze. Even my daughter's breath caught. He stared at me, eyes wide, all the bluster knocked out of him for a moment. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't, he said finally. I don't want to, I replied, but I have every text, every message from your family, medical notes about her stress, records of you skipping appointments, of your mother telling her to remember her place, of you demanding she promise nothing will change while she carries your baby. If you keep pushing her to the edge, I won't hesitate to put all of it in front of someone whose job is to protect that child. His chest rose and fell faster now. His gaze flicked to the papers again, seeing them differently. That's blackmail, he muttered. It's reality, I said. My daughter reached for my hand, squeezing once, hard. I'm not saying you can never see your child, she said. I'm saying if you want to be in our lives, things have to change. You have to change. Not the way I dress or how often I vacuum. You. He shook his head, almost like he was trying to rattle the words out of his ears. My mother said this is just hormones, he said, that you're both overreacting, that if we let you cool down, you'd come to your senses, that we shouldn't indulge. My mother said, I repeated softly, Jake, you're not standing here as your mother's son. You're standing here as her husband, as the father of her child. That means you don't just repeat what your mother thinks. You decide what kind of man you're going to be. The question hung there, heavier than any accusation. He rubbed his face with both hands, dragging them down slowly. For a moment, I saw a crack in the armor, a flicker of confusion, of a boy raised on one set of rules suddenly realizing they might cost him the life he thought he was building. I didn't want it to be like this, he said, voice rougher now. I wanted a family, stability, not constant complaining. Not this. Neither did I, my daughter said. I imagined us at appointments together, you rubbing my back when I felt sick, laughing about baby names. I didn't picture myself reading your mother's texts about how I'm embarrassing the family while I throw up in my car. He winced. I thought, she continued, if I just tried harder, you'd see me, not as a checklist of chores, as a person, as the mother of your child. But I'm done trying to be small enough to fit into your mother's idea of a good wife. Tears finally spilled over now, tracking slowly down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. He looked at her, really looked, for the first time in a long while. What are you saying? He whispered. I'm saying, she replied, voice steady despite the tears, that I'm not coming back to that house until I see you protect me from your family the way you've been protecting them from me. I'm not coming back until you can sit in front of your mother and tell her that talking about the mother of your child like she's a lazy burden is unacceptable. I'm not coming back until you can look at a sink full of dishes and a sick wife and think, I can help, instead of, she's failing. She took a breath. And if you can't do that, she finished, then I need to start building a life where I don't have to ask my own husband to treat me like a human being. The lamp hummed softly. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sliding briefly across the wall and then disappearing. He sat back in the armchair, the weight of her words pushing him into the cushions. He stared at the coffee table, at the papers, at the water glass, at anything but her face. Finally, he looked up. I need time to think, he said. I nodded once. Take it, I said. think hard. He stood, moving slower than when he'd come in. At the doorway, he paused, one hand on the frame. "If I walk out that door," he said quietly, "and I don't come back the man you're asking me to be, are you really ready to raise this baby without me?" My daughter's hand tightened on mine. She didn't look away. "I'm already raising this baby without you," she said. "The question is whether you want to join us or stay where you are." The hallway light flickered once. He swallowed. Nodded once, in acknowledgement or defeat, I couldn't tell, and stepped out into the cold. The door clicked shut behind him with a soft finality that echoed much louder in my chest. My daughter let out a shuddering breath and pressed her palm to her belly. "What if he never comes back differently?" she whispered. I looked at the closed door, at the stacks of evidence on the table, at the small, fluttering hope and fear mixed in her eyes. "Then," I said, "we find out exactly how strong you already are." The house felt impossibly quiet after he left, as if the air itself had withdrawn into the walls. My daughter sat on the sofa, shoulders curved inward, her fingers tangled in the blanket beside her. The lamp cast a muted gold around us, softer now, no longer illuminating a battleground, but something gentler, something fragile. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just breathed, slow, uneven breaths that carried the weight of years she hadn't lived yet. I sat beside her, not touching her, not crowding her. Presence was enough. Some moments don't need fixing. They only need space to settle. After a long while, she lifted her eyes to mine. "I thought," she whispered, "that marriage meant you never faced things alone." I reached for her hand. It was cold. "Sometimes," I said quietly, "marriage teaches you how alone you've been for a long time." She leaned into me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. Her body was small, but the life inside her, the one she'd chosen to protect at such a cost, felt enormous. "I didn't want it to be like this," she murmured. "I know." The heater kicked on with a soft rattle, filling the silence with warm air. Outside, the rain had stopped. But the puddles in the street reflected the pale streetlights like little mirrors left behind after a storm. She shifted slightly. "What if he really tries?" she asked. "What if he actually changes? Am I supposed to wait? Am I supposed to hope?" "You're supposed to heal," I said, "and he's supposed to grow. Whatever happens after that is not a test you have to pass." She nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her gaze. Being free and being lost can look the same in the beginning. Later that evening, she went to shower. I stayed in the living room, tidying the folders, stacking the papers, wiping the water rings from the table. The mundane motions steadied me. It's strange how survival can sometimes look like a woman clearing a coffee table in the half-light of her living room. Her footsteps returned, softer now. She wore clean pajamas and her damp hair framed her face in loose waves. She looked younger and older at once. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Of course." We lay in my bed the way we used to when she was little, her close to me listening to her breathing as it slowly evened out. The ceiling above us was dim, the shadows shifting with the faint movement of branches outside. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not supposed to know yet." "What if I make the wrong choice?" "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because the first right choice," I said, brushing her hair back from her cheek, "is remembering you deserve peace. And you've already made that one." She closed her eyes, letting the words settle. The next morning brought a calmer sky. Pale blue with a thin wash of sunlight, the kitchen felt warmer than usual, filled with the scent of brewing tea and buttered toast. She sat at the table, hands cradling her mug, eyes soft but clearer than the night before. "I'm going to call the counselor today," she said. "Set up an appointment." I smiled. "Good. And I think I'd like to talk to my professors. Tell them I'm dealing with something serious. Ask about remote options until things settle." "Good," I repeated. She hesitated. Do you think I'm running away? No, I said. I think you're rebuilding. A small smile lifted her lips. It was faint, but it stayed. We spent the rest of the day sorting things into calm piles: clothes, school materials, doctor documents, small comforts she wanted near her. Nothing dramatic, nothing heavy. Just the gentle work of a life rearranging itself around truth instead of fear. Once, while folding a sweater, she paused and placed a hand on her belly. Her expression softened, something like a new kind of hope threading through her features. I want the baby to feel safe, she whispered. You're already giving them that, I said. That night, as she settled into bed again, she looked at me with quiet resolve. I'm not going back until I'm certain, she said. Not just certain about him, certain about myself. That's strength, I told her. She exhaled slowly, her breath warm in the dim light. I'm learning, she murmured, that leaving isn't always the opposite of loving. I nodded. Sometimes leaving is the beginning of loving yourself. She turned onto her side, her back warming the blanket between us. The house was still, peaceful, even in a way it hadn't felt since her pregnancy began. And underneath everything, the uncertainty, the fear, the small trembling steps forward, I felt something steady returning to her. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet rise of dignity that had been waiting inside her all along. In the silence, she whispered one last question. Mom, do you really think I'll be okay? I looked at her, the woman she was becoming, the mother she was preparing to be, the survivor she didn't yet recognize in herself. Yes, I said, because you chose yourself, and that choice will carry you further than you know. Her eyes fluttered closed, not in fear this time, but in rest, and I lay beside her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing, knowing the worst had passed, not because the storm was gone, but because she'd finally learned how to stand in the rain without shrinking. That was the beginning of her peace, and mine. Those little lists she made on my kitchen table still stay with me. They were once signs of a woman trying not to fall apart, but now, when I think of them, they remind me of the first steps she took toward herself. If my story stayed with you, tell me what part echoed in your heart. Sometimes sharing these quiet shifts helps us see our own strength more clearly,